the government has a choice to make between the British people and their friends in the legal profession, they're on the side of the lawyers every single time. There is a clear divergence between the public's appreciation of justice and the views of the judicial establishment.
Stay with me, because the full video I'm about to show you puts everything into a new perspective. Now, I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine you're at a dinner party and someone stands up, clears their throat and announces to the entire table, you know what this country really needs? Fewer ordinary people deciding things. And everyone just nods along politely, refilling their wine glasses, murmuring approvingly, as though that is a completely reasonable thing to say over the roast potatoes. Well, congratulations, because that is essentially what has been unfolding in the House of Commons this week, and the most alarming part is that the people responsible don't seem remotely bothered about it. We are talking about jury trials, those wonderfully old, wonderfully stubborn, wonderfully British institutions where 12 perfectly ordinary people, your neighbours, your postman, the woman from the corner shop who always gives you an extra bag for free, get to sit in a room together and decide whether someone is guilty or not guilty. It has worked more or less for centuries. It is not glamorous, it is not efficient, it occasionally produces results that lawyers wince and legal commentators furrow their brows. But it is ours, it belongs to the public. And yet here we are, watching a government quietly tiptoe towards the exit door of one of the most fundamental rights in English law, hoping nobody notices the squeaky floorboard on the way out. Real quick before we roll the footage, if you're enjoying this content, do me a huge favor, hit that like button and smash subscribe. Over 98% of viewers watch without subscribing. Don't be one of them. It's free for you and it helps us out more than you know. Already clicked? You're awesome. Let's get into the video.
Katie Lamb. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We've heard a great deal from those on the government benches about the necessity of these court reforms. They say that, in order to tackle the backlog in our courts, we need to curb jury trials. But previous statements from ministers betray the government's true intentions. On the 7th of January, standing at that dispatch box, the Minister for Courts and Legal Services said, I quote, "People ask me, Sarah, would you be doing this if there was not a crisis in our courts? I say, yes. It would be bad enough to attack the time-honoured right to a jury trial in the name of administrative efficiency. To do so for ideological reasons without candidly making that ideological case to the public is a disgrace. The British people can see what's really going on. The government wants to curb jury trials because they don't trust the public. They think that judges know best and would rather that the justice system were run entirely by them. We know this to be the case because whenever the government has a choice to make between the British people and their friends in the legal profession, they're on the side of the lawyers every single time. We saw this judges know best approach in the Prime Minister's disastrous Chagos giveaway. We see it on asylum, immigration and the ECHR. We see it in their plans to allow prosecutions of veterans who fought in Northern Ireland. And now we see it in these plans to curb jury trials. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, jury trials exist for a reason. They're designed to ensure the judiciary can never stray too far away from the public's conception of justice and fairness. At a time when public trust in the judiciary is low, can it really be sensible to take away this crucial backstop? In judge-only cases at the magistrates' courts, free speech defences succeeded in just 16% of cases. In Crown Court cases, where juries very often sit, free speech defences succeeded in 28% of cases. There is a clear divergence between the public's appreciation of justice and the views of the judicial establishment. The result of this government's plans will be to further alienate the public and to drag the justice system further away from the views of the British people. If that's what they want, then they should at least be straightforward about it.
Enter Katie Lamb. Now, if you haven't heard of Katie Lamb before, you are about to, because she stood up in the Commons and delivered the kind of speech that makes you want to rewind it, make a proper cup of tea, none of that bag dunk twice business, an actual cup of tea, sit back down in your best chair and watch it again from the beginning. She was composed, she was precise, and she was, frankly, absolutely withering in the way that only the best parliamentary speeches manage to be. Not the kind of withering that shouts and waves its arms about and gets clips on the evening news for being dramatic, the kind that simply and methodically takes an argument apart, brick by brick, in full view of everyone, until there is nothing left standing except the rubble, a slight ringing in the ears, and a very uncomfortable silence on the government benches. Her central argument was this: the government has been telling us repeatedly and emphatically that B's reforms to jury trials are a regrettable but necessary response to the backlog crisis in our courts. There are too many cases, not enough courtrooms, not enough time, and something has to give. And if that were genuinely, honestly, the full story, then you could at least have a serious conversation about it. A difficult one, a contentious one, but a serious one. The problem, the rather significant problem, is that the Minister for Courts and Legal Services stirred at the desk box on the 7th of January and said something that rather demolished the government's own narrative. She said, and Lamb quoted this directly and at length, that she would be pursuing these reforms even if there were no crisis in the courts at all, no backlog, no emergency, no desperate circumstances requiring desperate measures. She'd still be doing it. The crisis, it turns out, is not the reason, it is the excuse. And that, as Lamb put it with the kind of controlled precision that is far more devastating than any raised voice, is a disgrace. Not because governments aren't allowed to have ideological convictions, of course they are, that is rather the point of having governments, but because this government has been standing up week after week, hiding behind the language of practical necessity, dressing up a political choice as an administrative inevitability, and hoping the public wouldn't look too closely at the seams. They wanted the cover of a crisis without the inconvenience of actually having to defend what they believe. And when your own minister accidentally tells the truth at the desk box, the cover rather falls apart. What Lamb argued the government actually believes, and she made this case calmly, carefully, and with considerable evidence, is that ordinary people simply cannot be trusted with justice. The judges know best, that the legal establishment, the professionals, the people who have spent their entire careers operating within the system should have greater authority over questions of guilt and innocence than 12 members of the public pulled in from their ordinary lives on a Tuesday morning. And she pointed to numbers that are genuinely difficult to dismiss. In magistrates' courts, where professional judges sit without juries, free speech defenses succeeded in just 16% of cases. In Crown courts, where juries are involved, that figure rises to 28%, nearly double. That is not noise. That is not statistical wobble. That is a clear, documented, measurable gap between what the judicial establishment considers just and what ordinary people, when given the chance to decide, consider just. And it matters enormously because it tells you exactly why jury trials were invented in the first place. Because juries are not some charming relic of a simpler time kept around for sentimental reasons like a battered old kettle that nobody has the heart to throw out. They are deliberate structural safeguard. They exist specifically to prevent the judiciary from drifting too far away from the public's own sense of fairness and justice. They are the mechanism by which the law is kept, however imperfectly, in contact with the people it is supposed to serve. Remove that mechanism and you are not streamlining the justice system, you are disconnecting it. You are telling the public that their instincts about right and wrong are no longer relevant to the process and that the professionals will take it from here. At a moment when trust in institutions is already fragile, when people across the country are already wondering whether the systems that are meant to work for them are actually listening to them at all, the answer the government has reached for is to give those institutions more power and the public less. It takes a certain kind of confidence to look at a trust deficit and conclude that the solution is more distance. Lamb's closing challenge was simple, direct, and landed with the kind of quiet force that echoes around a chamber long after the speech is ended. If this is genuinely what the government believes, if they are honestly, sincerely convinced that a justice system with fewer juries and more judicial discretion is a better justice system, then make that case. Stand up at the desk box, say it plainly, set out the argument, and let the British people form a view. That is how a democracy is supposed to work. What no government should be doing is pursuing a fundamental change to rights that have existed for centuries while pretending the whole enterprise is merely a logistical fix, a bit of sensible housekeeping, nothing to worry about, move along. That is not reform, it is a conjuring trick. And in a parliament that exists, among other things, to make sure the people running the country are honest with the people they're running it for, a speech like Katie Lamb's is a reminder, a sharp, well-timed, rather brilliant reminder that the trick does not always work. Sometimes someone is paying attention, sometimes someone stands up and says so, and on this occasion she said it very well indeed.